Hello and welcome back to the Team Called Palace YouTube channel. This is a preview of Friday night's game against Tottenham Hotspur. I'm delighted to be joined by former Palace correspondent, current Spurs correspondent, and also Tottenham Hotspur fan, George Sessions. George, lovely to have you back with us. First of all, 9 games into the new Premier League season, 7 wins, 2 draws, top of the league. You must be loving life under Big Ange.
Yes, it's pretty unbelievable to be perfectly honest. But it's great to be back on and nice to be getting a little link with Palace before the big one on Friday. But yeah, it's been crazily good for Spurs, and I think if Harry Kane had been sold any other summer, we'd all be mourning sort of by going into Christmas time still. But yeah, he barely gets mentioned nowadays, so it's been mad how quickly Big Ange has transformed it. And even Robbie Williams has got a song about him now. So yeah, it's going well at the minute. I'm sort of cautiously optimistic, but we'll see how Friday goes. But yeah, can't complain so far.
Obviously, most Premier League fans have a fair idea of what's been going on at Spurs because there has been a lot of media attention because you have been doing so well. And also, I think in part because Ange is just such a nice bloke, isn't he? But kind of tactically, what have you noticed? What's been going so well this season? Obviously, as you said, Harry Kane's moved on. And I think in the past, that might have seemed like the end of the world for Spurs. But new players have come in, new players are thriving. Obviously, Son's playing through the middle as well. But from your perspective, tactically, what's been going so well?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ange is obviously the main reason why things have changed, and the huge change he first brought in was the fact that we've gone from Antonio Conte, Nuno as well, but mainly Antonio, Jose Mourinho, both sort of pragmatic, really sort of low block counter attacking managers, relying on a bit of magic up front, and now we're attacking sort of left, right, and centre, and I mean tactically, and you probably will see this to a certain degree on Friday, but I mean Destiny Adoge, Tottenham's left back, is probably 25 to 30% of the time playing as a number 10. Pedro Porro is bombing forward from the right and getting in similar positions. And that's a big feature of Ange's teams, sort of reading a lot and looking at a little bit of what he did at Celtic. That actually his fullbacks do go into the middle of the pitch, a little bit like Pep and what Arteta do, but actually his fullbacks go even higher. And then, I guess a big, you have to put a lot of onus on the new Spurs number 10, which is James Maddison, because he's just been unbelievable. I knew he was a good player. I'd seen him plenty of times for Leicester. You look at his stats, and I knew he was, real top quality. But to watch him, I've pretty much been to every Spurs game by one. To see him up close, he's really, really, hell of a player, and much more probably elite level than I realised. And then you put Son down the middle, and all of a sudden, as we said, you've got Maddison playing the through balls, Kane scoring Son scoring the goals. It doesn't feel like, Harry Kane's even been missed, because those two, Maddison have combined so well. But all through the team, it's there's contributions all across defensively. We've shored up so much more, with Vicario in goal and Mickey van der Ven coming in. But you do have to go back to Ange, and having us as now a team that's attacking again, on the ball constantly, 65% possession every game. That's what fans have wanted to see. And that's what fans are used to at Spurs, really. Where even when we were rubbish, we always had the ball and we always tried to attack. And we've gone back to that. And at the minute, it's pretty gold dust. So whatever Ange's sprinkled over us at the minute.
I must admit, from the outside looking in, stylistically, it does feel like a good fit. And I do think also coming after the likes of Mourinho and Conte, from a tactical perspective, Ange must feel like a breath of fresh air for the Spurs fans. And then, as I mentioned earlier as well, just as a person, it seems like he's really happy to be there. And in the past, I think with a few Spurs managers, it's almost felt as though they're doing Spurs a favour. So I think from my perspective, and as I said, from the outside looking in, that's something that's really noticeable. Now, when me and Ben previewed the game on the podcast early in the week, Ben was raving about James Maddison. I think he's actually got a bit of a man crush on James Maddison, to be honest with you. but he was singing his praises. Personally, I was singing the praises of Mickey van der Ven because, as you said, defensively, Spurs have been so much better so far this season with Vicario in goal, with Van der Ven, of course, partnering Christian Romero at the back. I mean, Christian Romero is another one. Lionel Messi said about him being the best centre half in the world. And in the past, there's always been signs of promise, hasn't there? But it feels as though this season he's a little bit more mature, maybe slightly less rash. It feels as though he's stepping up now.
Yeah, it's. I mean, obviously the goals are what everyone is focusing on, and particularly Son with 7. But it is really defensively actually where Spurs have massively improved. I mean, last season, Tottenham conceded 63 goals. It was. They scored, I think, 67 or 68. But for a team that expect to be or want to be in the Champions League, to be conceding 63 goals is crazy. And I guess a big part of Spurs defending well now is you kind of, you rather than defending, you are attacking more. So you concentrate more. Your best form of defense is actually to attack sometimes. But yeah, you're right to highlight Van der Ven. Van der Ven and Romero's partnership has sort of blossomed straight away. And with Romero in particular, he's come on hugely this season. And that's kind of the defender that Tottenham fans saw during Conte's first season, the second half of the season. Romero was really, really solid then, and you could see why we'd spent sort of 40 million on him. And he was obviously very good at the World Cup, but last season he was poor club-wise. But with Van der Ven alongside him, it almost feels like, and I don't want to be too derogatory about sort of someone like Eric Dyer or Davinson Sanchez or Clement Longley, but it actually feels like Romero doesn't have to worry about what his defensive partner's doing, and he can just concentrate on his own job. I think that's been a key part because you always felt with Romero last season, he felt like he had to do something. He had to go in and smash a forward straight away to sort of signal his intentions and sort of, and try and show his teammates how it should be done. And Van der Ven's been a very calming presence for him. And so, Van der Ven, Romero and Vicario as a free have just worked really, really well and a lot quicker than I think most people would have expected. So yeah, that's a big tick for the recruitment team to bring in Vicario, and he only cost around the 20 million mark, and without poking fun at Palace, when you look at Palace signing Dean Henderson for 20 million when they've already got Sam Johnston, it feels like the recruitment at Spurs has been spot on this summer, and maybe not so well at Palace.
Yeah, this has been a running theme throughout the season so far on the podcast. Us talking about why did we spend 20 million pounds on Dean Henderson when we've already got Sam Johnson, who's been playing really well, and also we have other areas of our team that are desperate for upgrades. So yeah, that has been a running theme throughout the season so far. Obviously, we were talking about Spurs and how well Spurs have been defending. Palace had been defending really well until we went up to St James's Park and put in an absolute disaster class of a performance. It really wasn't very good. Some really bad goals conceded. As I said, we have been defending well. We've kept clean sheets in our last 2 home games. Unfortunately, we haven't scored in those games. So with Spurs, the Premier League leaders, coming to Selhurst Park on Friday night, we aren't in the best shape at the minute. However, I do take some solace in the fact that we were really bad against Newcastle. I would like to think there is going to be an improvement on Friday night. And also, there are just a few signs of positivity. There are a few whispers that Michael Elise might possibly be back in the squad for this one. And of course, we saw Matthias França very briefly at St James's Park. He scored for Palace under-21s on Tuesday night. So there is a little bit of optimism with Palace. But for us at the minute, it does feel as though we need to be very tight at the back, keep teams out. And then if we get a chance, we need to take it because obviously we've been badly missing the likes of Eze and Elise. I know that you keep a keen eye on Palace, George, but from the outside looking in, what have you made of our start to the season so far?
Yeah, I've got to be honest, with my Tottenham hat on, when I saw that Eze got injured a couple of weeks back, I was disappointed for him, but I did think, if he's out for sort of 4 to 5 weeks, he's going to miss our game, which, it almost feels like Eze is kind of the new Zaha in the sense that, Palace aren't a one-man team, but attacking wise, pretty much everything goes through him and obviously Elise when they're there. So if Elise is back, that'll be a huge boost, and that'll massively lift the crowd on it. And I already know it's going to be a real brilliant atmosphere on Friday night. But yeah, I think Palace I mean, I know we're sort of going over old territory, but I sort of do still feel sorry for Patrick Vieira to have lost his job when he did. After the hard run that Palace had at the time, I really did think if he'd got to the Leicester game, he might have turned it around. But Palace went back to Roy, and it feels a little bit like I've gone back in time. And Palace are kind of treading water. Roy's there. Feels like Palace will be safe because they just kind of always are safe, especially with Roy. But I can understand there being, a little bit of deja vu, and I'm not of the good kind. That actually it's, Groundhog Day a little bit. That you're going to hopefully finish 14th, 15th for what you're looking forward to. And I guess that's where Elise and Eze are so key because they're the young attacking players that give you an insight into potentially what the future could be. But yeah, Friday does feel very much like it's going to be Palace keeping it tight, Tottenham having lots of the ball, but probably struggling to break Palace down, actually, especially with a low block. So we'll be interested, from a tactical point of view. But yeah, I'm hopeful that Palace will be fine this season and not got many wins, but one at Old Trafford again. So you can't always turn your nose up at that as any football fan, let alone a Palace fan, even if Roy does have a good record there.
You see, before that game against Newcastle, we had actually had a pretty good start to the season, albeit it was being somewhat derailed by a bit of an injury crisis. We are starting to get a few players back now, but as you said, this game is going to come too soon for Abire Eze, who is just a massive player for us. As you said, without Zaha, he has kind of stepped up and almost taken on that mantle. Obviously, we still have the likes of Odsonne Edouard and Jean-Philippe Mateta, who have done all right in patches so far this season. I think they've actually been better than they have in previous seasons, but still probably not consistent enough. We've got Jordan Ayew, who is still just as industrious, draws just as many fouls, but again, doesn't trouble the score sheet as much as he probably should. You kind of mentioned from a tactical point of view there. I think when you look at the matchup, as you said, I think Spurs probably will have the majority of the ball. They're going to be the side probing, looking to break the deadlock. But as you said, Selhurst Park, Friday night, under the lights. Is this a kind of potential banana skin for Andrew's Spurs?
Yeah, 100%. And to give Spurs credit, they've had a couple of sort of similar-ish tests. They went to the Emirates, and the Emirates atmosphere is actually quite good these days, and they handed up well to that. And then went to Luton a couple of weeks ago, and that did remind me of Palace. I won't say it's as good as Palace, but it's very, very hostile there. And they were booing the TNT pundits actually that day, Rio Ferdinand and Peter Crouch, which showed a little bit of their kind of siege mentality going on down there. But yeah, I think it is going to be a real, real test. And it is actually still a youngish team. I mean, obviously you look at Son and Madison, their experience, but Mickey van der Ven's only early 20s. Destiny Adogi is similar. The whole back five really. If you include Vicario, even though he's 27 now, he's still relatively young as a goalkeeper and not experienced to these kind of atmospheres. So it's going to be a real test for them. And Palace losing 4-0 at Newcastle, I looked at that as well and just thought, it's not. I'd rather Palace had gone there and got a 0-0 and then they'd come in a little bit optimistic, and then Spurs can hopefully sort of pick them off early on. But you just know that all this week, Roy will be drilling into the players defensively, the positions to be in, when to hold the line, how to be shored up in midfield and probably crowding Madison. So it's not going to be, anyone thinking that Spurs are going to turn up and, smash 3 or 4 in past Palace. I really can't see that happening. I think Spurs probably will win, but I think it's going to be really, really difficult. And actually, Spurs have struggled against the low block. It took until the 100th minute to beat Sheffield United, and Spurs have been trailing for most of that game, and that's probably a good template for Palace to follow. And even a little bit similar was the Liverpool game. Once Liverpool had a player sent off, they sat in, and actually it took Spurs a long time to break them down. Obviously, another last minute goal. So it really wouldn't surprise me if the way Friday night goes, actually Spurs have lots of possession, but they are struggling to break Palace down. And at times this season, bizarrely, it's been set pieces which have unlocked the door for Spurs. So they could be looking at that avenue, but I'm sure vice versa, Palace will be thinking actually that's where they can get some joy with no Eze there, and Elise maybe clearly not fit enough to start. If he's on the bench, that'd be a boost. But Palace's best avenue probably is going to be a set piece. The way the creativity's been the last few weeks.
I think from my point of view, just looking at it tactically, one of the interesting things will be Spurs kind of being a bit narrow, as you said, those fullbacks coming inside. Because when I look at Palace, our strength usually is the spine of the team. Obviously, Sam Johnson's had a good start to the season. Gahey and Anderson have a really good partnership. Joachim Anderson, before the Newcastle game, had an outstanding start to the season. And then, of course, we've got our two holding midfielders back now, Czech Doucouré and Jefferson Lerma. We haven't seen much of them as a pairing because unfortunately Lerma got injured and then Doucouré got injured. But I do think they are a really kind of solid combination. And when you look at how teams usually hurt Palace, especially under Roy, it's usually the wide areas. So someone like Kieran Trippier, for example, he gave us a really torrid time up at St James's Park last weekend. So I think that'll be interesting because I think Spurs, yes, they may want to bring fullbacks inside, but I think if they are going to break Palace down, it's probably really important they do have those threats out wide with the likes of Richarlison and Kulusevski. George, just before I let you go, give us a prediction for Friday night. On the podcast, I went for 1-1. I think given Son's record against Palace, I could see him opening the scoring. But then I kind of rather ambitiously went for Matthias França to mark his home debut with the equaliser. So yeah, feel free to be as elaborative as you want.
Yeah, I really can see that scenario actually. Going back to the Luton game that Spurs played, they got the goal, and then second half it was a bit of an onslaught actually from Luton, and Spurs held on, but they were a little bit fortunate that Luton missed chances, and I probably could see similar Spurs scoring. I think it would take. I think it probably would probably be 0-0 at half time. I feel like every Roy game that I watched was 0-0 at half time. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was 0-0 at half time. Spurs score, and then yeah, probably being a little bit pessimistic. Probably Palace get a late goal. Yeah, especially if you're sort of hinting, dropping it. Elise might be back. That I can see him coming on and causing a bit of magic. So yeah, I can see 1-0. I'll try and not go for the same as yours. I'll go 1-0. I'll back us to hold on and keep the clean sheet. But I'm fearful of Elise, so hope he doesn't make me eat my words come Friday night at 10 o'clock.
As I said, at the minute, they are just whispers that he might be back. But yeah, I'm not trying to speak it into existence, put it that way. And George, thank you so much for, I would say coming back on the pod, but you're not on the pod. Thank you so much for coming on the channel. Lovely to hear from you. And obviously, after Friday night, I hope Spurs continue to have a really good season.
Yeah, likewise. I'll be keep my fingers crossed, especially when Palace play Arsenal and Chelsea and anyone else that's our title rival, Man City maybe. But no, thanks for having me back on and yeah, fingers crossed Palace have a good year after Friday, of course.
And thanks also to everyone for watching. A reminder that myself and Ben will be podding off the back of that game against Spurs. You can catch that on Spotify and iTunes. And remember, you can keep up with us on Twitter or X, whatever it's called, at TC Palace Pod.